The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast with limited commercials. Now, here's host, Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Geneva, your host every Saturday right here on News Radio Wham 1180. And today is, it's a special broadcast we're having today because we have two sets of fathers and one of their children. And the first two that we have, everybody knows, is John Kucko and his daughter, Natalie. I'm going to be talking to Natalie first. And then after that, we have John McCaffrey, who used to be a U.S. Marshal. He was responsible for the Shawcross investigation back when, and his son, who is in a similar line of business too. And right now, I have Natalie Kucko on the phone, and we're going to talk about, fathers and your relationship with your dad. And if you're talking about somebody who's been involved in the same business, I mean, sitting next to him at a broadcast desk, I mean, you can't get closer than that.
That is for sure. For better or worse. So
we're going to, you are too young, I know this, to remember the Newlywed Game. But back in the day, and a lot of our listeners are going to know just about this, is that the host would ask a question, and then one of the spouses would give the answer, and then predict. There would be a prediction from the other one what the first one said. So we're going to play a little game here. We're going to talk about you and your dad, but we're going to ask you the questions first, and then we're going to get your dad on the phone. He's going to see if he could answer these questions the same way you would. So are you ready for the Father's Day game?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I've been fascinated by kids that can work together with their dad and whatever. But tell me about the first time you met.
The first time we met,
like some of your earliest.
Remember back to my.
Like your earliest memory. How about that? Your earliest memory with your dad.
Earliest memory. Growing up, my sister and I. She's a few years younger than I am, but my dad worked nights for the longest time as the sports director here at Channel 8, and so he would go in probably about 12:30. That was pretty early for his shift. But he was always responsible for getting us on the bus, taking us to the park nearby, taking us for bike rides. So the very first halves of our days quite literally were spent with our dad. My mom worked in the morning, and so they kind of rotated shifts, so to speak. So I think that's one of my earliest memories is just having that time, learning how to ride a bike at a young age, getting ready for the day, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'd say that was probably the earliest memory I can think back to.
Well, in your line of work, what's the most challenging thing about working so closely with somebody that you're related to, your dad?
So I've gotten that question pretty frequently because whether it's people who know us or just people in the community, I think people are curious to know what that dynamic is like. And it certainly had its pros, but also its challenges. It's not always going to be smooth as could be. But no, it really was a great experience. We don't anchor any longer. My dad stepped down in late September. But just having that full year, I grew up watching his sportscasts and shadowing reporters here at the station. And that's really where I grew to love this craft and imagine a possible career for myself. There were moments of contention where, we'd be close to a newscast beginning and, I don't know, maybe he'd put his scripts too far on my side of the desk. It didn't really have any room or anything. So we'd bicker about that. But no, I mean, he would come in around, 2:30, 3 o'clock every day. And it was just comforting to have, your father there, if I was having a rough day or something, to confide in right then and there. I do miss that aspect of it for sure. And it was really just something we never imagined to become a possibility. And looking back, I know I'm going to be, extremely grateful that that was able to happen.
Well, here's a little comical question, maybe. My dad's pet peeve is what?
Definitely punctuality. That could boil down to, if we're late for something, it's going to get on his nerves because he is adamant about being on time, if not early. He was one of those dads that always had to be at the airport well in advance. That's just a direct comparison. But even when it comes down to, being in the studio on time for mic checks and things to get ready for a newscast, he was always in there 10, if not 15 minutes ahead of time. And for those of us who work in this business, that's not always a reality. Sometimes we're running out there a couple minutes ahead of time. And so I would say being on time is poignant. I
was laughing about the getting to the airport because my children, my two girls, accused me of wanting to get there 14 hours early. So we have that. We have that in common. Do you remember the first time you saw your dad out and about when you were a little girl, I would imagine, and then realized that he was famous?
Yeah, like the famous thing. I don't know. I don't read into that really, but I can remember as a kid, my parents would take us out to dinner, and just as a little girl, I remember, there was never a shortage of talking with people. And when I was a young girl, I didn't really understand at first, and then I came to understand, at that point, that was in, I guess around late 90s, early 2000s. And, folks gathered around to watch the news every single night. And I came to understand that, he was sort of this fixture in the community. And my dad has, even into my adult years, he's never been shy of, maintaining a conversation with anyone who, wants to just come and chat. I've always admired that about him, for sure.
Okay, here's a question for you. Of all the dads I've known, my dad is in the top 1% of...
It's tough. Of course, I don't want to say anything bad. But he's got,
that's pretty funny. We could always bleep it out, so.
Yeah. He's very sharp. And I think anyone who knows him knows, he went from sports to photography. And, his love for sports has changed over time, but he's kind of like a walking encyclopedia. I mean, you could ask him anything, any fact, any date, and he would have it just at the ready. And that came from just having that dream from a young age of being a full-time sportscaster, and did it for 30-ish years. And then, transitioning to his love of photography, there's just a wealth of understanding of this area, the Finger Lakes region, and finding just the most quiet, he calls them hidden gems, but just finding these places on the map that really, wouldn't be understood to the naked eye or the average person. And so I think that's one of his best assets is just an understanding, an appreciation of, the area around us, and exploring new
and
places.
sharing it with other people, which is really cool. So, okay, here's the last question. If your dad, I'm going to ask him this question. If you were to pass on advice about fathering to young fathers, what do you think your father would tell a young father?
I would say, so my dad is a girl dad, as they call it these days, 2 girls plus my mom. So he was kind of outnumbered from the get-go in our roof, under our roof. And I guess, I've heard him say, as we've grown older, patience is key, probably to practice patience. And I don't know if that's just, as we were growing up through our childhoods or whatever. But yeah, I would say that's one thing that he would look back on and probably offer his advice. And just being a dad of two girls, it can be challenging. I mean, going through those teenage years wasn't always rainbows and butterflies. So it's just an interesting dynamic.
Well, I had three sisters and I have two daughters myself, so I'm in the same I'm in the same boat. And there's one thing I really do believe. I do believe that girls need their dad. They're looking at their dad for guidance, for mentoring, and to see what a man should be. And you certainly have a great dad, and we're out of time for this segment, and I am looking forward to talking to your dad and seeing how he answers these questions. So thank you ever so much. Happy Father's Day Eve, Natalie, and I appreciate it so much. We're going to get back with your dad just right now. This is Dom for my friend Jim Shelley and his Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage in Lyman, New York. Like I say, a short scoot down 390 to exit 10, make a left at the light. A couple of miles down the road, there's Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage. You can see their nightly shows by going to fanaticspub.com, but this time of the year, his patio is open for free entertainment 3 to 6 on weekends. Go! It's a great place. This is Dom for my friends at Jack Greco Furniture. You drive your car, you live with your furniture. That's why Nita and I buy our furniture locally from Jack Greco. Hey, lots of old name furniture manufacturers switch to mass production, producing their furniture who knows where. Why settle for that? Jack has quality pieces made by true craftsmen, and if you need a custom piece, Jack can do that for you too. The season's upon us. Jack has quality outdoor furniture you won't find anywhere else. Go to jackgreco.com. Well, welcome back to our Father's Day edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. Like I said at the start of the other section, we had Natalie Kucko on the phone, and she's too young to remember the Newlywed Game, right, John? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, but you remember what that was like. I mean, somebody would ask a question, and the spouse would have to answer it, and you have to guess what the spouse was saying. So we got a bunch of questions here in my hand, right here. You can see them, and if you were here, you could see them. And the thing is that I asked Natalie these questions in this order, and you tell me how you think that she answered them, Mr. John Kucko of WROC, well, formerly of WROC TV. And are you ready to play the Father's Day Newlywed Game?
Yes, this should be very interesting. I'm ready to go. Fire away.
Okay, tell me about the first time you met.
Well, that's an easy one. It was at Rochester General Hospital, and she was delivered on a snowy evening in November. And she was very quiet. Did not come out kicking and screaming, was very quiet. Kind of like purring like a kitten, I would say.
Yeah.
It was a light snowfall on a dark evening just past the 6:30 hour.
Yeah, you remember those things. My daughter was born during a gentle thunderstorm. I'll never forget her looking at me that one time. So that you would know, but she wouldn't know. Okay, so here's the question. Yeah. Being in your line of work, tell me the most challenging thing about working with your dad in the TV business.
Well, I mean, it was a unique dynamic that had only been done really once before that I know of, and that was 50 years ago. I was part-time, and so I had worked there full-time as a sports person for many years, and so I had arranged to stay, but in a very limited capacity. So I go out and shoot every day out in nature and everything else, and I think after a while she didn't like the fact that I wasn't all hands-on for 7 hours of the day leading up to the broadcast. So, I think that was difficult in a sense for her. It was fine for me. When you're father-daughter tandem and you're working together, it's a visual industry, right? And so, everyone's waiting for something to happen on the air and maybe a little tussle or anything, but we never really let that happen. And so, you're certainly under the microscope a little bit more than I think most co-anchors would be in any station across America, quite frankly.
I'll tell you how nice she is and how respectful she is of you. And I wouldn't get an answer anywhere close from my daughters like this. She says sometimes your scripts would end up on her side of the desk.
Yes,
I mean, really. I mean, of all the things you can talk about being a child, okay, she's just very nice to you.
Well, that's what she said, but it's true. I would lay out, I was particular, dated back to my sports days. I had to have some room on the desk to put my stuff. She had about 5 feet of the desk. I had about 1.5 feet. So when I went into her territory, she didn't like that a whole lot.
Okay. Number 3, my dad's pet peeve is?
Pet peeve during the context of doing a show together would be communication is everything.
Okay.
So I was a nut for, hey, open my microphone. I gotta double check something with the producer, or I would ask the floor operator, running the camera, say again what we're gonna do here. I'm a nut for detail and a nut for communication, and you can never have enough in my view. It prevents a lot of errors from happening, and so I think the pet peeve would be not trusting a whole lot around you and always questioning everything.
Mm-hmm. And it goes right into what she was saying. She said, well, one of the things she says was punctuality. She says you be on time and not a minute late.
No, in fact, you be early.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows that with me. I've never been late to anything, and I'm always, quite frankly, famously early to just about everything I do. It's just the way I've gone about things since really my childhood, I think.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I asked her, I said, tell me the first time you saw your dad recognized, like in a restaurant or whatever. I mean, that must happen to you. That must happen to you a lot being on TV as it is. I mean, you get a lot of people that coming up to you while you're having, lunch or dinner or something like that. And you have to be gracious to them, I'm sure.
Always. I mean, and quite frankly, it happens a lot more now, given my Facebook page. I just got back from Ireland last night, and I'm in the middle of Ireland and in Killarney, and people are coming up to me who follow my page, from whether it be from Western New York or from somewhere else in the country. It's weird. So to your point, yeah, I mean, whenever you have anybody approach you, you've got to be kind of quote unquote on. You could be having a bad day. You could be not feeling well. You could be in Wegmans and maybe you just want to go in and get a prescription and get out of there. But you've always got to be cordial to people. If they take the time to come up to you and acknowledge you in some form for what you do, then at the very least, you've got to reciprocate and be classy about it, even if you're not feeling well or having a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is that your children understand that that's part of what you are, and you're getting this attention that the other dads aren't.
Yeah, no question. I mean, and some people struggle with that, really. I mean, they don't want to be bothered once they're not on company hour or whatever. I've never been that way. When that ceases to exist, then maybe it's time to get out or do something else. And whether you're on the air and television now or doing what you're doing in social media, when the people start stopping, when they stop coming up to you and say, hey, I love what you showed the other day, or I love watching you, then maybe that's your sign that your time's come and gone. Because when that stops, then clearly people aren't paying attention. So I've never, ever, ever really minded it. And I do appreciate people coming up and saying something kind. I think that's not a bad thing in this world.
I asked her, of all the dads I've known, my dad is in the top 1% of type
A individuals.
Aha. That's very close to what she said.
Yes, I can imagine it would be.
She says you are wonderful with detail, and she actually says he's a walking encyclopedia.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I mean,
yeah. The detail, keep in mind the sports. You had to know your information on everything.
Yeah.
And so that was a great, foundation. Years and years of reading the backs of baseball cards paid off, right? Or looking at my stamp collection and reading about American history, paid off. But yeah, I mean, I'm always a nut for detail, and I kind of alluded to that with the communication thing. And you got to know your stuff, and I like to be informed before I go out and post things or in the yesteryear world, broadcast it.
Okay, so we have about a minute left, and this is the most important question. And I asked her, says, if your dad was to give advice to a young father, what do you think your dad would give as advice to a young father?
Boy, the advice would be stay the course. There's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be times when you butt heads. There's going to be times when your kid doesn't like what you're saying, and they'll fight you back, and sometimes it gets nasty. But I'm about passion, and if I sometimes you got to be the enforcer. And if I believe in something and it's the best thing for my daughters, then I'm going to hold my ground. I never stop being a dad. Yesterday, she picked me up from the airport. We were on 390, and she was a little close to the car in front of her and wasn't able to see the road clearly the way she should have. And I said, you got to slow down. And then what happened? She went over a pothole. So I'll never stop being a dad. I was right. She knew I was right because she really didn't argue with me afterward. But, you never stop being a dad. I think you got to keep on being a dad as long as you're alive. Yeah,
you're right. She said, my dad has a great deal of patience. So that's a good quality to have. And as far as not getting along every once in a while, I call them thunderstorms. Every once in a while you have a thunderstorm, and the sun comes out the next day, and what the heck. So it's been delightful spending time with you. Happy Father's Day Eve, and
thank you.
I know you're going to enjoy the time with your family, and it's a pleasure to know you. And this the photography that you're doing is just lending a little bit of joy to everybody's life now too. So thank you for that.
No, I appreciate it. I took 40 people to Ireland, and we had some of the greatest weather they've had over a week-long stretch they've ever had. And so I'm a little sleepy right now, but I'm going through all my pictures and videos, and I had a blast out there. So I hope you're well, and I wish you a happy Father's Day. You too. Thanks for being on the No Nonsense Roundtable. All right, sir. We'll talk to you later, Dom.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is nice. This worked out really, really well, and she was a lot kinder to you than I think my daughters would be.
Well, she knows she'll hear about it if she isn't. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, you too. Take care. Bye.
We'll be right back after this. And now here's co-founder of the Rascals, inductee of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Rochester guy Gene Cornish to say a word about his favorite team.
The Red Wings rock. I've been a fan since I was a kid in my bedroom hearing the cheers from Silver Stadium. Memories I will never forget. Here's what's happening this week.
The Wings are home this weekend. Friday is our salute to the Negro Leagues with an appearance by Denard Span and fireworks. Saturday has a cap giveaway and fireworks. Father's Day features a baseball giveaway and play catch with Dad on the field postgame. For tickets, visit redwingsbaseball.com.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Genova here at 10 o'clock Saturday, same place, same time, and all the old shows, or previous shows, probably sounds better than old shows, is on NoNonsenseRoundtable.com. And here we have a special edition for Father's Day. So the whole idea is to have a distinguished father come in who has maybe something in common career-wise with a distinguished son. And in my studio right now, we have Mr. John McCaffrey, who used to be the sheriff of, do you want to say sheriff? It's you were the marshal, excuse me. You can tell I don't do this for a living. Marshal here in upstate New York, and then a trooper before that, right?
Yes, I spent 24 years with the New York State Police.
Yeah, and his son, Greg McCaffrey, who is in the same business but different, just taking care of people in law enforcement. He is the district attorney of Livingston County.
Yes, Dom, that's correct. Same team, maybe different position.
Yeah, different position. So I'm fascinated by these stories of the dad and how the dad started off in a certain direction, and somehow or other it morphs to the boy or the girl, and It's got to be something where you have a lot of stuff in common, but a lot of stuff maybe not in common. And what's the inspiration for it? And Father's Day is about fathers, so let's talk about that. So you were in law enforcement as a trooper and whatever. Let's talk about that, John.
Yeah, I was right out of college. I knew I wanted to be a New York State Trooper, and I knew that public service would be something that would be good, beneficial. You probably wouldn't be real rich, but the benefits you get from helping people, and that's what it's all about, is helping people. So I became a uniformed trooper, and after 6 years, was reassigned to be an investigator in the Bureau of Criminal Investigations. And then I ultimately became a senior investigator, so I managed investigators. Fortunate, started out in Geneseo, went to Rochester. In Rochester, we worked very closely with all the law enforcement agencies. That's what the state police is about, working with other agencies, helping them. We had a lot of resources, and I met just a lot of people in my career. Rochester PD, Monroe County Sheriffs, all the local PDs. We were there to help them and supplement them in their with expertise.
Well, the atmosphere must have been a lot different than it is now, too. I mean, back in the day, law enforcement was respected a lot more than it is now, and the headwinds that you have in the job and even in prosecuting the laws have got to change a lot in the past 30, 40 years, right?
It has just changed so immensely. Law enforcement was a very respected career, and people respected you because they knew you were there to help them. You were not the enemy, and they gave you a lot of respect, and in turn we respected them. People are what pays your salary, so you respected them. But somewhere along the line here, everything has gotten reversed, and they view the police as the bad guys, and it just law enforcement today has just changed. I don't know if I could go back and work in law enforcement and do what I did at the time, because if you were good to people, those people would come back and help you solve cases, and now nobody does that. Nobody will come and say, listen, I can help you with this case. This is what I saw. That doesn't happen anymore. It's so sad.
So how many children were in your family?
I have 2 sons.
Okay.
I have Greg, which is the younger one, and then my son, Jeff. In fact, he just got elected to the school board in Webster.
Okay.
So,
what does he do for a living?
He actually is working for Wegmans.
Oh, great company.
He has his master's degree from Nazareth College, and he's a coordinator. Both my sons are people persons.
Yeah. So, Greg, tell me what it's like to grow up with your dad as a law enforcement officer. I mean, at what age did you see him and you go, oh, that's what I want to do?
I knew pretty early. I never really wanted to be a state trooper or an actual police officer.
I mean, law enforcement.
I think the biggest thing that I learned from my father was what is right versus what is wrong and how to treat people. So I think that growing up in law enforcement, a lot of my kids, a lot of people I grew up with were probably intimidated and scared of my father at first because they didn't know him. I can see
that.
And they didn't know him and some of the chores and things we had to do around the house. But again, through his service that he talks about, coaching, volunteering, getting to know my friends, other people, it's interesting. He's intimidating from a distance, but up close when you get to know him. So I think, for me, the biggest thing was just, we knew very clearly what was right, what's wrong. And for us, you have to treat people fairly and equally and treat everyone the same, no matter how much money, how much education. That to me is really, I kind of learned from my father and his time in law enforcement. And, I kind of learned too about, he says service, service to others. How many times I would wake up and he would be gone because he was a homicide investigator with the state police. Yeah. And now being a prosecutor, I know when there's a homicide, when work calls, these officers answer and they don't come back until they're done. So it was hard at times when he was gone 2, 3, 4 days. But it kind of motivated me to be, if he can do that, I need to do that. I need to think about others, before myself, my own family at times.
And John, seeing that stuff, you can't take that home with you.
No, you can't. And I guess maybe there's one benefit. I actually lived in a small town, York, in Livingston County, but my major time was with the state police in Rochester, so that was a 30-minute drive.
Ah.
So when the phone rang at 2:00 in the morning, and they said, "Look, we've got this case going," I had to go to work. You'd get up, you'd get dressed, you prepare yourself because you wanted to be professional, and on the way into work, you thought about what pieces needed to fall together, what you needed, what assets you needed, and at the end of the day, maybe 18 hours later, on your way home, you would decompress.
Yeah.
Decompress. You get back home, and it was really a benefit to me. And the people I dealt with in Rochester didn't know where I lived.
Ah.
So it wasn't the same connections, So I could separate the two, and I was always fortunate to. The state police just prepared me for all my careers.
Now, I heard a story once, just recently, about the difference between the veterans coming back from World War II and the ones coming back from Vietnam. And they said the ones coming back from World War II were on a boat for a while, so they could mentally cleanse themselves of what they went through, and even that 30-minute. Commute that you had to have, and then when you had made it more, making it from Rochester, I could see how that would happen. Yeah, makes sense. We're about ready to head to a break, but we're going to get more into this. Now, you're a dad, right?
I am.
Okay, how many children do you have?
I have 3 sons, 2 that are graduating here this month.
Wow, boys running the family. Boys running the family. And we're going to be talking about what you learned from your dad about being a dad right after this. This portion of the show is brought to you by Martinizing Dry Cleaners in Fairport. During COVID days, I discovered a dry cleaner that would pick up and deliver. I discovered Martinizing in Fairport. I later discovered that the owner, Todd, was an ex-corporate employee who went on to start his own business just like I did, and his customer service is beyond compare. Google rating, 4.9 with 143 reviews, 4.9. Call 425-4242 or martinizing.com/Fairport. This is Dom for my friend John McClurg at McClurg Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram and McClurg Chevrolet in Perry, New York. Hey, the buds are coming out on the trees. Everybody likes a nice ride. Take a ride down to McClurg in Perry and see the great deals that he has on Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram vehicles and Chevy trucks. I tell you, John McClurg does business the old-fashioned way. He takes care of you. No nonsense. And used cars? He's got great used cars. See him today or go to McClurg Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram or McClurg Chevrolet. Okay, we're back. We're talking to John McCaffrey, former police. You would say police for a trooper, right? I mean, you would word the word police, law enforcement.
Law enforcement.
And Marshall. Now, there's a really big case that you worked on. Let's tell everybody about that one.
Probably you're referring to the Arthur Shawcross investigation.
Yes, I am, sir.
That would a pretty big case. And again, it was the relationship that I built and the New York State Police built with the RPD. And they were not struggling, but they needed new eyes on it. Mm-hmm. So we were sent in, and I was sent in, and I sat down with their investigators, and who were great people. And we started looking at things, and and we came up with some theories and things, and but we did what we were supposed to be doing, and it was through that investigation that we did find a body, and we put our helicopter up, and I was flying aboard the helicopter when we ultimately saw a person leave the scene of where one of the bodies was, and it turned out to be Shawcross, and it was just kind of a history now. But we were doing good police work, is what we were doing.
Yeah. So before the break, I was asking Greg. You have 3 boys. Boys run the family, I see.
Absolutely.
So what did you learn from your dad that you're using now as a dad? I mean, what are the things that you're teaching your boy?
Well, patience is one thing I learned from my father. Having now 3 teenage boys, I think patience is important. I was pretty fortunate that I changed careers and became district attorney when my sons were very young. So I think one thing I kind of took from my father was to, leave work at work, spend time with family. Work will always be there. So it's worked out very well for me. The 5 to 9 o'clock window every night has always been family time. I'm still getting emails. I'm still on the phone. I'm still trying to work, but I've really kind of focused on my boys. And I think for them, I want them to basically give everyone a clean, fresh slate when they meet them, where they go to school, their friends. There's a lot of judging, a lot of stereotyping in our community anymore. And I don't want my sons to be like that. Just because you may not, like I said earlier, a lot of money or a lot of friends and stuff, they don't know their backstory. Basically take everyone as they come and then form your own opinion. And that's something I learned from my dad, because again, I can't stress how growing up in York, some of the people that were our closest family friends, you might not be an investigator of the state police, or, my mom being a teacher. Wow, you have something in common with that gentleman or that female. But again, they kind of took them as, it might be a little rough on the edges, but, a smart, caring, compassionate, welcome everybody and treat everyone fairly and equally. And I think for me, I want my sons to do that, because that's what I have to do every day in my job.
He seems like a person that doesn't yell. He doesn't have to. Is that accurate? Or is that just a perception of getting of him?
Yelling would be very scary as a child when he would do it. It's usually just by tone, but
wow.
I'll tell you, and it's weird, and I hope my kids listen to this and they eventually hear it. To be yelled at one thing, to disappoint him is another. And I think it's more by the tone that he can yell at me, and you can shake off someone yelling. I yell at an umpire when I coach baseball, and they get yelled at all the time. But if I go up to the end of the game and say, look, you didn't try today, or you didn't care, or you did this for a paycheck today, I'm disappointed in you. To me, I'd rather have someone mad at me than disappointed in me. And that's how I felt with him. To make him proud, to work hard. If he yells at me, he yells at me.
Yeah. So what are the ages of if you don't mind me saying?
I have twin boys that are 18, and they're both seniors at Honey Falls Lima, both going to John Carroll University out in Cleveland next year.
Yeah, great place.
And my baby, he's 15, and he's the last in his grade to, he'll be 16 in September to drive. So we're kind of chomping at the bit to get him driving a little bit. So I might be hitting you up for driving lessons here soon, Dom.
So yeah, but not the Shelby. No,
I wouldn't trust him with the lawnmower, not to mention the Shelby.
So do they have any idea what they want to do?
Ironic enough, one is very into sports marketing, sports management, which, we're a very sports oriented family. The other one is on the track to go to law school. Okay. My daughter worked for a while for the DOJ, so that little bit of that in our history, although she and we like to argue, just for the entertainment value of it. So that's the one going to law school. He's my arguer, and he wants me to stay in the practice of the law long enough to go against me. And I told him I wouldn't wish that on him.
Yeah, I would get into discussions with my daughter, bring her to, she was at HFL too, discussing whether there actually was an up or not. We would drop down ridiculously intense arguments whether the concept of up is valid or not. So with that, we're about ready to go to the next section. But thank you for coming in. Do you have some help, advice, anything about fathers and Father's Day that you'd like to pass on to about 10,000 people right now?
I think for me, and I've heard it for years, but now I'm kind of living it, is enjoy it. It goes fast. It's like I said, I became district attorney a little over 12 years ago, and my kids were little and just started school, and now in a couple weeks they're graduating. So I enjoy every minute I have with them, and I hope to continue with that. So enjoy it.
John?
I think to be a good listener, one of the people that taught us in the State Police Academy said something that just caught me and always stuck with me, was that you don't learn anything when you're talking. You learn when you're listening. And I use that attribute many times when I was interviewing people, but I also did it with my whole life, is that everybody's got something to offer. And it's better to be a good listener. That's when you learn.
Right.
Because when you're talking, you're not learning.
Right.
So, and I think as a dad, sometimes it might be good just to listen to what your child is telling you, and you'll learn a lot.
Well, the other thing, and you seem to be saying too, is that sometimes they're saying something, but they're saying something. They're saying something different than you think they're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, God bless you guys. Good dads make good children, and good children make good societies, and good societies make the United States, right?
And happy Father's Day to you as well, Dom.
Why, thank you, sir.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. We'll be here next week, 10 to 11 Saturday on News Radio WHAM 1180. But you can always get past shows on NoNonsenseRoundtable.com, as YouTubes, or any place you get your iHeart podcasts.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every Saturday from 10 to 11 on News Radio WHAM 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.